Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I have to give all praises and infinite glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKadosh, Yahweh, being the true Lord, calls God, Ba'ashem, being the name of, and Yahushai, being the true Lord and Savior, only called Jesus, Yahushai, being the Holy Spirit. Double honors, apostles, elders, a great millstone that rule well on the worthy double honors. And peace and blessing, hopefully, out there, pushing the work of the Lord in true faith, sincerity, and promoting their bodies as a living sacrifice. Shalom, Paul as well. It's your brother Mashal, and today's edification, exhortation, this lesson, I'll be titling it and going over. Yo, post that lesson, bro. Post that video, bro. You know, stop hiding your wisdom, man. Post that video, bro. Stop hiding your wisdom. You know what I'm saying? And I got inspiration to do this lesson from, something I've just been meditating on, man, is, just in noticing, like, there might be a video, brother might post, you might post a video, or you might go on another brother's channel, and, it could be a very edifying lesson, but then you go on a comment board, you see a bunch of people, you know what I'm saying, they're, put in a bunch of, like, great precepts and stuff like that, man. You know what I'm saying? Very beautiful precepts, man. But when you go on their channel, they got 0 videos. You know what I'm saying? They got 0 videos. But they have like 80 comments, man, on a brother or an elder's post. You know what I'm saying? Which is not good, man, because, if you know so much, man, you know what I'm saying? You already have the knowledge and stuff. Why are you not teaching? You know what I'm saying? Why are you not teaching? By doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, man. And also, you come forth as a person that's a sideline watcher, man. You know what I'm saying? Or, a sideline watcher, is like someone who watches the game, you know what I'm saying? Always critiques, you know what I'm saying? Always, knows all the facts, knows everything. You know what I'm saying? Is a fanatic in a way, but, has no, body of work, to prove, themselves, man. So at the end of the day, man, in this truth, don't be a sideline watcher, man. Don't be a keyboard warrior. You know what I'm saying? You a comment board brother, man. Don't do that, man. You know what I'm saying? If you have all these precepts, man, you can definitely make a video, man. What are you afraid of, man? You afraid of man? You know what I'm saying? You afraid what man's gonna tell you? You afraid of not getting views? You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, this is not about the external validation, man. This is about, what I'm saying, the internal validation, which is the spirit, and obviously how about Chanel Shine, man. So you shouldn't be afraid to post that lesson, brother, man. It don't even gotta be a long video, man. Even, 2 minutes, man, of a video. You know what I'm saying? It's still edification, So, man, try to, post videos, man, because, especially if you're a brother, man, that can't necessarily go to the highways and byways, and hedges and stuff, man, by posting videos, man, that and stuff like that on the unicorn, which is really the main, source of edification, man, because, a lesson, a video is able to reach, the 4 corners of the earth, man. You could be not only edifying people in your city, but you could be edifying someone in a whole, other, part of the world, man. You could be in Chicago, and then you could be edifying a brother in Hong Kong, in China, or the, Jamaica or something, man. You never know. So at the end of the day, man, post that video, bro. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take much, you know what I'm saying, to record a video and post it, You don't need no, perfect lesson, you know what I'm saying? And it's sometimes through the spirit, it be the lessons where I don't really feel like the lesson is too good, you know what I'm saying, that, people actually love the most. You know what I'm saying? So just post that lesson, bro. And also, by posting lessons and stuff, immediately as soon as you get the spirit, you ultimately, have it to where your spirit is hot. and you're able to, you know, be locked in. You know what I'm saying? But if you wait and you be like, oh, I'm gonna wait a month, I'm gonna wait 2 months, you know what I'm saying, to post a video, what if you forget that lesson idea? You know what I'm saying? What if the spirit, you know, leaves you, man? We're not, this is not guaranteed, man. You know what I'm saying, that we're gonna have the spirit and all that, man. You know, so post that video, bro. You know, this is not only for, you know, brothers, you know, who are, you know, don't post lessons, but also brothers who do post lessons, man. You know, don't wait, you know, a week. Don't wait 2 weeks. Don't wait 3 weeks. Try to post as much videos as you can, man. You know, because this is what it's all about. It's all about feeding the sheep, man. It could be a 30-second clip. It could be, you know what I'm saying, you know, back to the basics video. It could be anything. You could do a lesson on a news article. You could do a lesson off a movie. You know what I'm saying? You could do a lesson on a person. You know, there's so much things you can get inspiration from. And if you do need help coming up with lessons, if you do need, you know, that confidence, you know what I'm saying? Because of course at first, you know what I'm saying, you know, I remember when I first started, you know, making videos, post notifications, you know, online and stuff, it did feel a little awkward. It did feel, you did have that form of nakedness, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, you know, but, you know, the more you do something, the better you get at it. Of course, you're not going to feel comfortable, man, but you still got to push yourself, man, you know, so, you know, you know, if you have a fear of whether it be public speaking, you know what I'm saying, a lot of brothers, you know, who you see in the highways and byways, you know, prophesying, you know, they might have had, you know, a fear of public speaking, you know what I'm saying, because when you go in the highways and byways, you know, you're prophesying against the whole world, man, you know, in front of the whole world. People, you know, are judging you. People could hurt you, do whatever, you know, but still through the Spirit of the Lord, we're still able to go out there, you know, and have the courage, man. But at the end of the day, you know, everything you did in life, everything you've become good at is something that you've spent hours doing. You put a lot of time into. So you can build, you know, your level in prophesying too, man. You know, whether it's like online, whether it's, you know, in the highways and byways, the more you do something, the better you get at it, man. So, you know, practice doing that, man. You know what I'm saying? Start off small. You know, it could be a 5-minute lesson. Start off with that. Then if the Spirit's on you, then you could go 30 minutes. Then you could go for 2-3 hours, 4 hours, man, if the Spirit allows, man. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, just, you know, do your best, man. You know, it's because it's, you know, it's not a good thing to hide your wisdom, man. And now let's go into the scriptures, man. You know? You know, let's go into the scriptures because, you know, it's very important, man, to, you know, not be a person that, you know, hides in the shadows, man, with their wisdom, you know, because, you know, it's a sad, you know, truth, because a lot of times, you know, people, you know, even in the world, you know, in society, you know, any craft, a lot of people have the potential to be very great, but their own self-doubt is holding them back, you know. A lot of times you see people come up with inventions and stuff. It's not really that person that came up with the invention. They just either stole an idea or gained inspiration from someone, you know, that ultimately didn't have the courage to showcase, you know what I'm saying, their talent, you know what I'm saying, their invention, you know what I'm saying, etc., man. So this is why it's important to ultimately, you know, showcase, you know what I'm saying, your talents, your works, because, you know, people can easily steal it, man. If you don't own, you know what I'm saying, your talents, your knowledge, etc., someone can easily take it, man. And it's the spirit, so it's the same thing through the Spirit. You know, the Lord can easily give your spirit to someone else, man. You know? But now, let's go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 20, in verse 21. This book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 20, verse 31, and it reads, "Better is he that hideth his folly than a man that hideth his wisdom." You know, and that's right, man. You know, man, like, you know, a person that hides their folly, a person that hides, you know what I'm saying, their wickedness, you know, is better than a person, you know what I'm saying, that hides their wisdom. Why is that? Because, you know, wisdom, you know, is something that's precious, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's it's something you really can't hide, man. And if you do hide it, you got a serious problem because wisdom is something that stands out, you know? So if you're, hiding it, you got a serious problem, man. You know? It's like you're trying to hide a precious, stone or, or a gem, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be very hard to hide it, man. Especially when you're out in the world, you know what I'm saying, the sun is flashing. You're gonna have to really, really do your best to hide it, man. You know? And that's not a good thing, man. You know? Because at the end of the day, you know, the fear of the Lord, man, you know what I'm saying? In order to have the fear of the Lord, man, you gotta have what I'm saying, wisdom, man. If you truly fear the Lord, you know, you're gonna, showcase your wisdom, man, because um, you have to understand that the Lord, is doing us a favor, man. You know what I'm saying? By, giving us this knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Because we didn't go to school for the Bible, man. You know what I'm saying? You see a lot of people go to seminary schools and stuff like that. We didn't go to school for the Bibles, man. We were just normal niggas in the world, man. You know what I'm saying? Before, when I was in the world, I never opened the Bible before, bro. You know what I'm saying? Even though I went to church, I never opened the Bible. So, by me randomly just, having the Spirit on me, you know what I'm saying, and being able to understand the scriptures, break down, have the eyes to see and ears to hear, that's a gift from the heavens, man. And you got to realize that, man. Because the scriptures say, man, many are called, few are chosen. A lot of people are called in this thing. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, have the ability to hear this word, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. But they can't get it, man. Why? Because the Lord didn't choose them, man. You know? So at the end of the day, you got to count yourself as blessed that you have this, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in the Spirit of the Lord. So if you're neglecting, you know what I'm saying, the Spirit and stuff, you're being ungrateful. And then what happens when a person's ungrateful? What would you do if you had a girlfriend, or if it could be just not even a girlfriend, but just anybody, you was giving somebody money, you know what I'm saying, you was letting somebody stay in your house, you know what I'm saying, you was looking out for a person, so to speak, man, doing something for a person that you wouldn't do for just anybody, man, only for that special person, and that person, you giving that person, what I'm saying, resources, you giving that person knowledge, and then as time goes on, they're not using that knowledge, or they're not using the resource that you give them. Aren't you gonna get mad, right? Yes, you will, because you see that person as being ungrateful, and and also, it's frustrating because you took your time out, you know what I'm saying, to help that person, you know what I'm saying, when you didn't necessarily have to, you sacrificed a lot of things so you can see the betterment of that person, to give that person a gift. It could have probably been your last $1,000, your last $100, and you still gave that person, that gift, as a present, and they're not grateful about it, or they don't use that gift that you give them. You're gonna be frustrated. So how much more the Lord, man? So the Lord is gonna be extremely mad with you, man, because he sacrificed a lot. He could have gave this to anybody. You know what I'm saying? He could have gave LeBron James the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, but no, he gave it to you. He could have gave anybody else, the Spirit, but he gave it to you to show how special you are. And you're not, showcasing your knowledge. You're not, what I'm saying, ultimately giving the Lord a spiritual thank you. The true way you're able to give the Lord, appreciation and basically say thank you to the Lord is by ultimately doing his work, man. By doing his work, staying in the spirit, you know, that's how you ultimately show your appreciation. That's how you show you have faith. You know what I'm saying? You know? The scriptures even say, man, that, in the book of Hebrews, faith without works is dead. You can't say you believe in Yahweh Shem Yahushai 100%, but you have no works to back it up. You know? Because you have to understand, love is an action, man. When you appreciate something, you're gonna go out there and showcase and prove why you're worthy, So if you can show up every day to your job, show up every day, every day to your job. Your manager gives you money, right? The way you show appreciation to your manager, for giving you money, is by showing up to work every day and doing the work. So it's the same thing in the truth, man. This knowledge is like spiritual money, man. So if you're not doing the work, man, you're not going to get paid, and you're going to get fired. And that's what the Lord's going to do, man. So it's ultimately better for you to hide your folly than to hide your wisdom, man. Man. Man, but now let's go to the book of Matthew. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 6, and verse 1. Not Salak, yeah. Salak. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 5, and verse 16. Matthew 5 and 16. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 16, and it reads, "Let your light so shine before men." Not Salak. Let's start at the 14th verse. Book of Matthew, chapter 5 and verse 14, and it reads, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid." Verse 15, "Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all there that are in the house," man. And that's right, bro. And verse 16 to the point, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." And that's right. At the end of the day, we're the light of the world. So the Lord, this is actually Yahushua speaking in red letters. We're literally commanded to let our light shine before men. Being a man of the Lord, doing what you're supposed to do is not showing off, man. That's something what you're supposed to do. By being yourself, some people might hate you for it, for shining your light, but don't dim your light for anybody, man. The scriptures literally tell us, man, to not dim our light. Don't be like, oh, I think brothers, man, might get jealous, or brothers might think I'm annoying for posting too much. Who cares about them, man? Stop doing it for people. Do it for the Lord, man. Do it for yourself. So you gotta let your light shine before men that they may see your good works, man. So you gotta let your light shine so that people, see your good works, man, and glorify your Father which is heaven. And how do you glorify your Father which is in heaven? By doing his work, man. So at the end of the day, you gotta show your works, man. You gotta show your works, man. You gotta see others. You gotta allow others to see your body of work, man. Because sometimes, if you're a brother that's consistently posting, you posting videos, you doing stuff like that, you can actually inspire a brother, man, to start making videos. Because if someone looks up to you and they see you doing the right thing, they're gonna be like, dang, maybe I should do this, man. So you got to think about that, man. Yeah, you might think nobody's watching you, You might think nobody's trying to be like you or get inspiration from you, but I'm telling you, there is. There's someone out there, there's a secret admirer out there that's just waiting for you, you know what I'm saying, to lead by example so they can follow, man. So always think about that, man. You know? So this is why it's important to show your works. Because by showing the works, you get inspired, man. For me, for example, I see the elders laboring, you know? I see the other brothers, you know, in this truth, you know what I'm saying, laboring. I'm like, oh, shoot. If they can do it, man, I can do it too. You know what I'm saying? So there's always an example, man. You know, even the prophets of old, you know what I'm saying, by their works, we're able to be inspired. We're able to be comforted, man. So it's the same thing, man. You know what I'm saying, with the people now, man. You know what I'm saying? You never know who you can inspire, man. And also, man, the scriptures say, man, that a man shall be known by his fruits. You know? You know? The fruits not only means, you know what I'm saying, obviously, you know, the type of, you know, people, you know, a person, you know, produces and stuff, but also their works, man. You know what a type of person is, you know what I'm saying, by the amount of work, by their work ethic, man. You know what I'm saying? You know a difference between a lazy athlete and a hardworking athlete. How? By their work. You know what I'm saying? By their body of work. You know who the greatest is, and you know who's the mediocre average people. Why? Because it's based off the body of work. You know? So this is why it's important. You gotta have a spiritual resume, man, because at the end of the day, you know, the scriptures tell us, man, to give diligence to make our calling election sure, you know? So if you want to get hired by the Lord, you know what I'm saying, and get on those chariots, you know what I'm saying, you gotta have a resume, man, you know, because that's what the Lord's gonna look at, man, you know? He's gonna look at, dang, like, was this person, you know, doing my work? You know what I'm saying? Was this person, you know what I'm saying, posting lessons to the best of ability? Was this person going to highways and byways? Was this person trying to, you know, help the ministry any way he can? You know what I'm saying? You know? Little stuff like that, man. You know? That's what the Lord looks at, man, because that's your resume, man. You know, but if you're a person who knows all these things, but you know all the knowledge, you know all these things, but you didn't contribute to the ministry, you know, none of what you did mattered, man. You know what I'm saying? You got to look at it as kind of like, okay, knowing all, you know what I'm saying, the scriptures and stuff like that, it's kind of like your GPA, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Your grade point, your grades. But at the end of the day, you know, especially people in college, you know, they have a misconception that, oh, if I get good grades, I'll land a job. But no, the truth is that a lot of companies, when they're hiring, they look at your experience. They look at your body of work. Because anybody can get good grades, you know what I'm saying? But do you have the experience, you know, that's going to be able to translate, you know what I'm saying, to that job or role that you're going to be hired for? And spiritually, you know what I'm saying, that's the same thing, man. You know, in the truth. Because anybody can know the breakdowns, you know what I'm saying? Anybody can know all the scriptures and stuff like that, you know? But if you don't know how to apply, you know what I'm saying, what you're learning into your real life, you know what I'm saying, and actually be a walking, you know, scripture, you know, a living sacrifice, man, you know, then it means nothing, man. You know, it's like those people, you know what I'm saying, in sports or just anything. Like, we all know a person that, you know, dedicates their a lot of time to, you know, practicing, you know, this craft, but they never really get better. You know what I'm saying? Especially in sports. Why? Because what they're practicing is not helping them, you know, translate to the game. You know, you can take a bunch of jump shots, you know what I'm saying, but you got to make sure, are these the jump shots you're gonna take in the game? You know what I'm saying? So it's not only about just understanding, man, it's also about applying, you know, and that's what the Lord's gonna look at. The Lord's gonna be like, dang, yeah, he did all this studying, he did all this, but can he apply his knowledge? You know? Can you apply it? That's the thing. A lot of people know a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? Or, are very intelligent, but at the end of the day, they can't really reach their max potential because they don't know how to apply it, man. And that's what separates the good from the great, you know? Because the great ones are able to apply what they've learned, and become savants, you know? Man. Man. So it's about that, man. You know. Trying to do things to the best of your ability. You know. Man. Because, man, it's like the Lord, man, is not gonna, just save you. You know what I'm saying? Just because you know the knowledge, but are you doing the work? You know what I'm saying? Are you doing the work? It's all about the work at the end of the day, man. It's all about the work, you know? Those people that really make it in the world, you know what I'm saying? Are people who, put in the work, man. Not only do they, of course, it's a thing of natural talent, but the great people have, the natural talent and the work ethic combined, which creates greatness, man. So we're blessed with the talent. We're blessed enough to have the spirit. We didn't go to school for 15 years to learn the Bible. No, we were blessed. This was a gift from the heavens, man. So now all we got to do is just mix in the work ethic, with the talent, and then boom, we got it, man. Man. So it's like, it's really important, man, to make sure you're not hiding, your abilities, man, because it's just gonna do you more harm than good, man. You know what I'm saying? Because what are you hiding for? What are you afraid of, man? What's holding you back? And the only thing that's holding you back is yourself, man. Don't be a victim, man. A lot of people will have the victim mentality and make excuses. A brother might be like, oh, I don't post lessons because, oh, my phone doesn't have good quality. Man, go post that video, man. You don't even have to record your actual physical self. You can do a faceless lesson, man. Or someone might say, oh, I don't have a phone. So go buy a phone, man. Invest in yourself so you can be the best man of the Lord. There's no excuses. You can do lessons on computers. You know what I'm saying? You can do a lesson on anything. You can do a lesson on your tablet. You know what I'm saying? You could do a lesson on an Obama phone. You know what I'm saying? You could do a bunch of things, man. So don't make any excuses, man. Never make any excuses, because at the end of the day, we have to understand that we're the masters of our destiny, man. We can't blame our environment, man. If you really want to be the best man of the Lord you can be, you got to make sure you're investing. You know what I'm saying? If you look at Batman, or any superhero really, Batman, Spider-Man, they're really great examples. But before they became Spider-Man and Batman, completely, they had to make sure they invested into, whether it be gadgets, especially Batman. Before Batman really became Batman, he had to make sure, he invested so he could get the tools, so he can get the armor for his suit, so he could make sure he's well trained, stuff like that. So in order for him to be Batman and actually, be the best Batman he could, he realized that he had to invest in himself. He had to spend a lot of money so he could get these gadgets, so he could be safe. He invested in his health and well-being. He made sure he was in shape. He made sure his mind was strong enough to, overcome all the battles, his future battles. So you got to invest into yourself, man. so you can really be the best man of the Lord you can be the best superhero you can be. Because if Spider-Man's investing into his suit, you know, if Batman's investing into his suit, you know, why are you not investing into your spiritual suit? You know what I'm saying? So make no excuses, brothers, man. You know? Post that lesson, bro. Post that video, bro. Don't be a sideline watcher, man. You know? Don't be a fanboy. You know what I'm saying? You in the elders' comments, you in the brothers' comments posting scriptures, but when we go on your videos, man, you know, you got nothing, man. You've been on YouTube for 15 years and you still got no videos. You know what I'm saying? Post that video, man. You know what I'm saying? Because especially in the times that we're coming into, man, it's gonna be the end, man. And you know, your faith will be tested, man. You know, so why not, you know, show, you know what I'm saying, your faith in the Lord now through your works, you know what I'm saying, so you can be preserved, you know what I'm saying, in the future, man. You gotta think of it as, you know, we're preparing for a test, you know. By us, you know, doing the videos, we doing all these things, you know, we're applying what we're learning, you know, from the scriptures, you know, to our real life and actually becoming, you know, a walking scripture. You're ultimately preparing yourself for the test. You know, we're doing homework right now, man. You know what I'm saying? So we're making sure we're studied, we're making sure we're putting in the work, and we're showing, you know, our work. You know what I'm saying? This is how, like, the teachers, man, you know what I'm saying, in school, I remember when I was a kid, a lot of teachers would tell me, man, you got to show your work, especially when you're doing a math problem. Like, how did you get the answer? Because anybody can get the answer, man. You could cheat, you know what I'm saying? You could do a lot of things. But to really prove that you really understand the concept, you know, the topic at hand, you're going to show your work. And that's the same thing. You know, if you really think you really, really understand the scriptures, you know, and all this, you're going to have your work, man. You're going to have proof. You know what I'm saying? You know, because anybody can come up with an answer. Anybody can, you know, say a claim. You know what I'm saying? But do you have the evidence? You know? You know, man? You're like, oh, I've been in this truth for 15 years. But where's your work at? You know? The beautiful thing I like, man, I like watching the old vintage videos of brothers because it's like, damn, like, you know, not only are they saying, you know, that they've been in this truth for a while, but they also have a body of work to show it, man. Some brothers, man, I'm a younger brother, some brothers have been, you know, doing videos, you know what I'm saying, I've been going highways and byways, you know, doing the work of the Lord before I was even born, man, and that's beautiful to see, you know what I'm saying? So through their works, I'm able to know that they're diligent men, man. So if we, you know, tend to trust people more when they show their work, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, you can't have blind faith, you know what I'm saying? You know, you can't blindly follow something. You know, if you're a person that has discernment, you know, if you're a person, you know, that has, you know, a brain, you're ultimately gonna ask for the proof, you know what I'm saying? You know, because, you know, faith, you know, is known by works, man. If you truly faithful in something, you know what I'm saying, you're gonna have the works to back it up. You know what I'm saying? You know, man. So, you know, anybody can, you know what I'm saying, have the answer and all that, man. But can you show your work? So just think about that, brothers, man. You know, just really understand that we have to give diligence to make our call and election sure. You know, obviously, you know, you're not going to be the most perfect brother. You know, everybody got different circumstances, but at the end of the day, you know, put yourselves in situations where you're able to be the best man of the Lord you can be, man. So with that, we're fight to give all praise on the glory to Yahweh Bashim Yahshai, Bashim Akakadash, man. You know, feed the sheep, keep the faith, man. You know, and do your thing, man. You know? Because, man, like, you know, we at the end, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, show your works, man. You know, above, death to America. Keep the faith. Shalom.